Meet SAE International. You might not know us, but we've been with you. For the past 100 years, we've been revolutionizing transportation and mobility, partnering and supporting the dreamers, innovators, and can-doers who are changing the world. It's the child whose future career as an engineer will be shaped by our STEM education programs. It's the businesswoman boarding her flight with peace of mind, knowing that our committees have created the standards that ensure she gets from Detroit to Delhi and back again safely. It's the parents-to-be who are sleeping soundly, knowing that their electric car is fully charged and ready when it's go time. Driven by a passion to advance mobility knowledge and solutions, SAE's global community of over 200,000 engineers, technical experts, and volunteers continues to develop and curate the most reliable and comprehensive collection of engineering resources and consensus-based standards on Earth. The next mobility revolution is upon us. Connected and automated, electrified and sustainable. SAE will be here, as we have for the last 100 years, moving the world forward.
Welcome everyone to the Fall 2021 CDS Sponsorship Event Overview. Thank you for joining us today and to the SAE Detroit section for hosting this event. I am Matthew Meyer, your moderator for the next hour. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm an SAE member from the Detroit section and I graduated from Lawrence Tech. I was in their Formula SAE program and I was also the SAE student chapter president. Now today I work at General Motors as a EV propulsion lead engineer. Before we get started, let's move to slide 2. I quickly want to review some of our upcoming SAE Detroit section events. The Formula SAE presentation event overview is on January 14th. It's a Friday from 12 to 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. This event is an overview of the Formula SAE presentation competition event that will provide information to make your Formula SAE team more successful during competition. The discussion will give teams the opportunity to understand the intent of the event and ask questions. Highlights of the conversation will ensure that you do not miss out details on tips of how to be successful. There are other events that are just like this one that will be in January. The date and time are TBD, but it's the Formula SAE rules event overview. And then the following month, February of 2022, will be the Formula SAE cost event overview. Please note that you must register in advance to receive a personalized Zoom link for each of these events. Go to www.sae-detroit.org to find out more details of these great events. Moving on, let's move to the next slide and do a quick review of a few of the rules of the Zoom presentation. First of all, a recording of this discussion will be shared via the SAE Detroit section YouTube channel at a later date. Aside from today's presenter, all of the attendees have been muted to avoid any distractions. We do truly want you to participate and have turned on the chat functionality, so please feel free to share your questions with us. You can start right now if you already have those questions. As the presentation goes on, I'll be constantly scanning for questions and I'll take them and ask the presenter at the correct time. Your presenter today is Adam Zemke, president at Launch Michigan and your Formula SAE Michigan competition presentation event captain. Hello, Adam. Thanks for being with us today. Would you like a few seconds to introduce yourself?
Sure, Matt. Thank you so much for having me today, and a huge thank you to the SAE Detroit section team for putting on today's event. My name is Adam Zemke, and I have the privilege of serving as president of Launch Michigan. We're an education advocacy organization here in Michigan, and also have been affiliated with the Formula SAE competition for a number of years. I was a student competitor as well. I attended Michigan State University and participated on their Formula SAE team from 2005 to 2008, serving as project manager for a couple of those vehicles. And I've been affiliated with the competition, specifically in the presentation side of things, ever since, and then also sit on the organizing committee for the Michigan competition. Very excited to be here with you today, and also excited to be with you for the presentation event overview that Matt referenced later this year. So thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide an introduction.
Thanks, Adam, for that background. How about we get started?
All right, thank you. Could you advance the next slide, please? So, today we're here to talk about sponsorship. And sponsorship is something that is near and dear to my heart. It was an area that I worked on as a student competitor. And it is also, for the cases of many Formula SAE programs, probably thought of as one of the least interesting from an engineering or technical standpoint, but also very important. And because if you don't have sponsors, your program is not going to go very far. The reality is that all of these vehicles are expensive to build, and the need for sponsorship and for affiliation with organizations who want to help support these programs is really mandatory. And so we're here to talk a little bit about some of the importance of this effort and to try and provide some tips. As Matt indicated, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Be happy to get to them as we go forward. So, the basic sponsorship really is quite simple. It's really a mutual relationship. If you could hit advance there, Matt, please. It's really a mutual relationship that is formed between two organizations. And it's really important that we think of it like that. If we think of sponsorship simply as I am trying to get something from somebody else, you're not going to be successful, because sponsorship is a way of benefiting two partners around a project. And so the simplicity of this is really started by asking ourselves 4 questions. Who are sponsors? What are they looking to sponsor? Where are they coming from? And how are you going to get there? Next slide, please. And so, but the most important thing you could do as you advance to this is what we saw on the next slide, which is developing a mission and a vision. It's going to be very hard to sell your product, in this case, your team, to anyone to gain interest if you are not clear as to what you're trying to do and how you're going to get there. So advance the next slide, please. So what is a mission and a vision statement here? We are an organization who seeks to do what? Tells others who are outside your project who you are and what you're trying to do. So the number one question you will get from any cold call with a new sponsor is they're going to ask you, so what is this? And what are you trying to do? And really, part of the discussion that you need to make sure to emphasize is answering the question of what it is you're trying to do and how partnering with you can help benefit not only your organization, which is probably a little more clear to you and to them, but how it can benefit their organization too. And so a mission statement helps you get to that. This may seem extraordinarily simplistic, but the reality is that this is the number one question you will get as the start of any new conversation that you're having with a sponsor, and frankly, it will be the basis for any recurring conversations you're having with potentially recurring sponsors. Next slide, please. So, who are sponsors? Taking us back to that first slide, there's really 2 types, and depending on the organization, different types will be of different fit. Could you advance, please? In-kind sponsors comprise of 3 areas: raw materials, parts and components, and labor and services. And I break those up specifically into those 3 categories because they really are different when it comes to the approach. So raw materials, you very well are likely to look at a supplier that is local or in your region, that is focused on potentially scrap material or excess. These are things that may be small and trivial to them, but could be very important and could be the right size for your project. Formula SAE cars are not very large, and as a result of that, a lot of scrap material that is of the correct quality that you need, scrap to them could be not scrap to you. So raw materials are one area. Parts and components. As a student, I always found that there were a handful of suppliers who had components either that they built or that they distributed And in many cases, those suppliers were all over the country or all over the world. I think that's even expanded as Formula SAE has grown. And so many of these organizations will have Formula SAE sponsorship packages already developed because they get asked a lot, but every once in a while you will find one that does not. I often tell a story of an organization, it was a component supplier, a distributor in a different part of the country. And I called them and asked them if they would be willing to donate a particular part to that we needed. I think it was electrical part at the time. And they asked, they were actually familiar with Formula SAE. They knew of a local team. And I asked, if they'd be willing to do it, and appreciate that they do have a local team, but we would love the help and the ability to partner as well. They sort of asked, well, what about the team that we have next door? And I said, well, obviously you're more than welcome to support them, but I'm calling on behalf of our team here. And I say that with a bit of a smile because I want to emphasize the fact that you should never think that just because a sponsor is close geographically or in close proximity to another organization that you should be prohibited from seeking their sponsorship. You really don't know what's going on with every other team. And I've always had the approach that there is a lot of opportunity in the land of Formula SAE sponsorship, and everyone should have more than enough to go around. And so there's thinking about components, don't think things are off the limit. And then labor and services, of course, are another one. Certainly, there are going to be components that either you don't have the machinery to make from a complexity standpoint, or you don't have the time. Developing relationships with machine shops and other providers, potentially of composite work or things like that, are very important and helpful to completing the project on time. And then finally, the one that is in a separate category all of its own is financial relationships between sponsors and teams. In many cases, these are the most complicated efforts to set up, but they're very important, and they're very important that you maintain them. We're going to get into a conversation about maintaining sponsorship relations here in a minute, but financial relationships are literally like gold. Make sure that once you set them up, that you work on growing them and you show that mutual benefit, because losing them can be really devastating. I recount a time, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, when I was in college and the auto industry was about to go into a recession. And our team had built and saved up enough financial resources that we were able to ride that recession out while those sponsorships were put on pause. And we never would have been able to do that had we not been financially prudent, but also really actively engaged our sponsors. And so financial relationships are very important when it comes to the completion of these projects. There's only so much free or free raw materials, parts and components, and labor that you can get. Eventually, you will need to purchase something. And so having those financial resources is important. Next slide, please. So what is sponsorship? Go ahead and advance so that pulls up there. It's a relationship, as I talked about, that is mutually shared. This is a really important thought process to get your mind set in before you approach sponsors. You are not trying to benefit yourself exclusively. You are working to set up a relationship that is mutually beneficial to both organizations. So, develop mutually shared goals, be able to anticipate and think through ahead of time so that you can anticipate what the mutual benefit is to the organization that you are looking to pursue sponsorship with. And be prepared that you may have multiple reasons for doing that, and you shouldn't be shy of sharing all of them. If the goal is to obtain the relationship, be open to what they want to see as well. In many cases, each of these sponsorships are customized and individualized between the two organizations. So it's certainly wonderful to have a menu of things that you typically offer to sponsors, but be ready and be open to setting up things that are unique to the individual requests of the prospective sponsor. Next slide, please. So where do you obtain sponsorship? Go ahead and advance it here. It really is anywhere. And I learned this through an evolution of thought as a member of our team, where I watched other programs, not necessarily Formula SAE programs, but other student programs, obtain some very unique things when it came to sponsors. Participation in marketing events and shows and things that helped showcase their team. And I had never thought of that before, and I realized that my thinking was artificially limited. That I had been thinking, well, the only people who would want to be engaged with our team were automotive companies because they were looking to hire our graduates directly. There was an easily defined and clear link. And the reality is that the Formula SAE alumni reach has grown significantly, and it's not nearly as automotive centric. It is still heavily automotive, by the way. But the alumni base is much broader than just the automotive industry these days. And the reality is that a lot of those companies have a strong interest in forming these relationships with Formula SAE programs simply because they want to recruit, but also because they want to support types of student programming and learning efforts for other reasons as well. And so, some can be a corporate giving aspect, some can be recruiting aspects, others can be marketing aspects, depending on what you're doing to market the program. The point behind all of this is don't limit yourself. You would be shocked as to how generous organizations can be. And they oftentimes see strong mutual benefit when you may not think of it initially. So be open. Next slide, please. How's a sponsorship? This is one of the most important slides we'll look at today. It is far easier to maintain a sponsor after you have opened the door and created that relationship than it is to get new sponsors all the time. So this slide is really all about maintaining your sponsorship. Do not overpromise. Be professional about things. Communicate regularly. Be honest with how things are going, even if they're not going well. Be frequent in your communication. And when you are talking about things, make sure that you're not losing faith in your efforts either. You have to believe in your product. It will come across in your communication if you don't. And it will come across if you don't value the sponsor's mutual interest as well. So be professional, be truthful, and believe in what you're doing. I think the latter item here, believe in your product. If you don't do that, you're probably not going to last very long on a Formula SAE team because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of belief in order to ride this out in some days. It's not an easy project by any means, but has a ton of value, obviously. Go ahead and next slide, please. So how to pursue sponsorship. So in the digital age, oftentimes, and I've gone through a couple of digital ages in my lifespan here between access to social media and things shifting over time. There is no substitute, in my opinion, for face-to-face communication. It's tough to do in our era of COVID times, but when you can do it safely, it is extremely valuable to building and maintaining relationships. It never hurts to make a cold call. Get used to it. I used to spend hours sitting in an office cold calling or researching organizations that we could pursue sponsorship with who had, I thought, mutual benefit, and making cold calls and making reoccurring cold calls because I would not get the response I was hoping for or as quickly of a response as I was hoping for. Be diligent and don't be afraid. These are relationships that can become personal, but they are professional. And the folks that you're going to reach out to they may be caught a little off guard, but they will not take offense to what you're trying to do. They know you're in it for the right reason, that you're trying to benefit your educational experience. And the organizations typically are very supportive of that effort. So cold calling is a way of the world. It's very important that you get used to doing it and that you get comfortable doing it, at least comfortable enough. Sending electronic communication never hurts. I typically would pursue sponsorship by, if I was a cold call, I'd make a phone call and try and establish a relationship that I could transfer information via email. And so that never hurts either. I would not rely on email communication as your primary means of cultivating relationships with prospective sponsors. I do not think it will get you very far because it's not very personal, but it's a great way of communicating, obviously, as well. And I don't think it is in 2021 sought as you have to pop something in the mail anymore, that an email is sufficient. I think we should accept that and continue. But I also would encourage you not to write off this final one, the face-to-face communication. I started off the slide talking a little bit about that. There is no substitute for face-to-face communication. It's the reason why companies spend millions of dollars a year on airfare, sending engineers and sales folks around the world to try and close deals. And the reason being is that personal relationships matter. And so face-to-face communication, get ready for it when it's safe, but don't shy away from it. Anytime you can meet a sponsor, in a mutual neck of the woods, take advantage, because it really does have a lot of value to building that relationship and keeping it cultivated. Next slide, please. How to search. So, all of you, I think, are at universities. And so each university has a development office. They maintain relationships with alumni supporters and also industry supporters. Form relationships with your development office. This was something that when I first started being engaged in the team, we had more of a limited relationship. It wasn't non-existent, but it was more limited than it was as I started wrapping up my time with the team. And I found that the university really appreciated our program in its ability to help recruit and recruit students and showcase opportunities for students that were maybe a little more unique to the university. And so university development can be your friend. You do have to prove value, because there are a lot of programs on the university's campus generally who want to be showcased by university development. But be diligent, keep maintaining your relationships, and realize that they could be opening up multiple doors. And so maintaining that communication with them, especially around any sort of opportunities for grants or submissions to companies on behalf of a larger university submission, those are done at their timing, not necessarily yours. So be ready to be ready for those things. Locally based industry is a great one that you can pursue, in particular for those raw materials and service sponsorships. There are many machine shops, larger and smaller, around the country and around the world. I've not ever met a neck of the woods that didn't have one in some relatively close proximity. It may not be within 10 or 15 miles, but within an hour drive. We certainly, as well as at our time at Michigan State, had sponsors in Southeast Michigan that were an hour and a half away. And there was an absolute value to having that sponsor, and we maintained it, even though it was not a short drive. So locally based industry, great way, oftentimes rooting for the home team. You could be the home team, and so keep that in mind when you're looking. And then finally, as we talked a little bit about already, recruiting. Recruiting is the easiest way of forming a mutually beneficial relationship, especially in today's world where talent is at a deficit and supply is at a premium. So make sure that as you are looking to form sponsorships, that you are targeting recruiting areas or recruiting departments in organizations looking to hire. That could go into your cold calling piece as well. Next slide, please. So documentation. A phone call to a new sponsor or even a recurring sponsor will get the door open for you somewhat, but you really need to provide them with some visuals that are exciting and provide a level of detail that you frankly would struggle to provide on a phone or even on a Zoom. So make sure that you have both hard copies and electronic copies of marketing materials for the team. Those marketing materials can include some sponsorship basics in them. But as I indicated earlier, I would certainly recommend making your sponsorship customizable. So having a supplemental one-pager that you can adjust and create for a specific sponsor, on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, looks professional and will go with your marketing material, is a good idea and very advisable. And it does not hurt to, as I said earlier, you have a mission and vision statement. Put things in a cover letter that is addressed to the sponsor, that indicates that you are providing a request to form a mutual relationship with them specifically, and that you have some materials that are specific to your request to them, and also some general materials that tell you about the program. So do this, and then business cards, ironically, even in 2021, people still use them, and they're a great way of just having as a reference point for getting your contact info. So don't hesitate. Get some business cards made up as well. Next slide, please. So we've talked a little bit about this, but attraction. What are the where do you target? So marketing is one, and the reality of Formula SAE is there is not a ton of marketing opportunities, at least provided through the competition. But your team could be doing some really great work in your community. You could be going to local schools and encouraging young people to pursue STEM education careers. Something that is always near and dear to my heart, and a big part of the reason I've stuck around and participated with Formula SAE after I graduated. I feel the value in that is really important. And you know what? Companies feel the value in that is really important too. So, you're looking for marketing opportunities that are related to participating in your community. If you have auto shows or other shows that help showcase your team, take advantage of those as well. Oftentimes you can have space donated by the show sponsor, or the show entity that is putting on the show. Take advantage of those opportunities. You can have sponsors help you gain sponsors. Some irony there, but very much a potential. Take advantage of on-campus events where companies are coming to campus for alumni events, or for career fairs, or for sporting events where, homecoming tailgates and things like that, where you can have your cars out there and create exposure for yourself. Marketing ties into that. Corporate giving is another one that's really corporate philanthropy. This is basically where companies, they generally have a do-good mission, a give-back mission that is associated with their brand and with what they're doing, and will often provide for financial resources to be contributed as part of sponsorships, as part of their corporate giving structure, or other things too. And so corporate giving is another way. And then recruiting is the final way that I always talk about. Especially in today's world, where it's a great position for graduates to be in, because the supply on people is larger than the the supply is smaller than the demand. So there's high demand for young people to go into technical areas and support efforts, and so recruiting is at a premium right now. So, and Formula SAE graduates, in every survey that I've seen from surveying corporate recruiters, people know what Formula SAE is. They know what the benefits are to young people who participate in Formula SAE, and they know how those benefits translate into stronger first-time employees or entry employees into organizations. They know that Formula SAE graduates start off with a level of thinking and creative problem solving and collaboration that some other graduates do not have. And so take advantage of the fact that this is known, and focus on recruiting areas that can help you form sponsorship. Next slide, please. How to retain. So real quick on this one, do what you promised, do your communication, you're communicating, and spread the word. So what this means, I talked a little bit earlier about about making sure that you maintain sponsors, because it's a lot easier to maintain than it is to have to go out and recruit new ones every year, every cycle. I experienced a time when I was at one of my years as a student competitor, where we were very busy. It was right before the car was set to be done, and some of our other team leads were working on finding some sponsors as well for some specific things they needed. And we set up a relationship. It was with a local machining company, and there was a lapse in communication in our team, and we ended up not delivering on some specifics that they wanted for the guys working in their shop. They really just wanted some, they didn't care about really any of the things that we were pitching in terms of corporate giving or recruitment or marketing. They none of those things really mattered to them, but what they cared about is that the people doing the work really felt valued and they were excited about the program, and they just wanted some swag. They wanted hats and t-shirts and things like that, and we didn't deliver it. We lost that in our communication chain. So the next year we went back out, and they were on a list to renew the sponsorship, and I went and talked to them and talked to the president of the company. It wasn't a very big company, and he said, you guys didn't deliver what we asked last time. And I sat there dumbfounded because I thought things were great. We had, sent out our normal communications and things like that. And he stated about the request they had, and I apologized, told him how sorry I was on behalf of the organization, that should never have happened, and went back to the shop and picked up all the extra swag I could find. And I went back to his office and I left it with his assistant. And I just said I wanted to make sure that the owner and the people who did the work received this. This is what we promised. I never asked for another thing. And a few weeks went by, a couple of weeks, and he sent us an email out of the blue and said, really appreciate what you did. Recognize it was a communication issue. You didn't ask for it, but we would be happy to renew our relationship and help you out again this year. And that was a really important lesson learned about communication. And people are people. Generally, people are very kind, and if you try and do the right thing, then you will be rewarded with them trying to do the right thing too. And so, do what you promised. Keep track of things. Keep things organized. Communicate regularly with your sponsors to ensure that they are getting what they are hoping to get out of the relationship, and don't be afraid to talk about that relationship. Sponsors can help attract more sponsors, frankly, and so spread the word about what you're doing. People they may like to hear about what others are helping you do, but they also may have a little bit of a competitive spirit and say, I want to be talked about too. And so spread the word, talk about what all the good things that are happening with your team that sponsors are helping you do. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And I think that actually wraps it up. In fact, you'd think all the years ago in this presentation, I would have anticipated that, but it's great to be here with you all today. I don't know if there are any questions at all, Matt, but really look forward to this every fall, and look forward to when we can be together in person too.
Yep. I do have a few questions for you that have come in. And please, if you do have questions, put them in the chat window and I will grab them and ask them to Adam. All right, the first question, Adam. How do you go about face-to-face meeting with a sponsor? I'm not too sure anyone in recent years have actually gone to a company and talked with them. How do you politely ask them to meet? And when writing in an email or ask them when calling, when we meet with them, what would that look like? Do we bring things with us like a brochure? How do we prepare for that conversation? And then there's a couple more questions on top of this one. I know I just asked you about 4.
That's okay. So I think this is a great question. In fact, the way, I always approach initial communication, even if it's a reoccurring relationship that the team has, I always pick up the phone. Face-to-face communication is the most personal. It's impossible well, not impossible, I suppose, but unlikely that you're going to go to an organization, knock on the door and say, I'd love to talk with you at some point. So make a phone call to any of the contacts you have there, or if it's a cold call, make a phone call first, maybe trade some emails, set something up, and then physically go there. And so you're setting up a meeting. just like, for instance, when I worked in the auto industry and was a supplier to an OEM, we always did, reoccurring meetings where we would do a lot of work communicating in between our teams verbally on the phone and via email, but we always set up the face-to-face meetings. So just trade your normal communication and ask if you can stop by and drop off some things and talk with them more about the relationship. And so it's usually a great inroad to ask to drop off some swag, even if they didn't ask for it. That gets you an opportunity to do a face-to-face. That's a great way, great icebreaker, if you will. Did that answer that question, Matt?
Yeah. So you go there, I assume you're dressed up, maybe in your own team shirt or swag. And what about like a brochure? You bring a brochure with explaining who you are, what your team does.
Yeah. So the first part, I'm glad you actually asked this. We always emphasize this in the presentation event, but it's just as relevant here. These are professional relationships. Eventually, they'll become personal if you build. If you're on the team long enough and you build relationships. I still talk with people who were sponsors of our team, via email, and I'll run into them at events if they're supporters of the university and things like that. So those have become personal, but they're still professional. And so, the best thing you can do as a student in particular is show that you're professional. And so show up like it. Don't show up in your shop clothes, smelling like gas and things like that. Team swag is great to wear. Also, if you don't have it yet, maybe you're a new team or something like that, wear a nice collared shirt and something professional you would wear to like an interview. Do that first of all. And then certainly in terms of the materials, thinking of that slide that we had, use that as a reference point. Always go ahead and do your team brochures. By the way, PowerPoint is not a brochure making system. It's great for presentation, but utilize or find a graphic designer, either at your university or through maybe a sponsor, that will be willing to help you design a professional brochure with the content that you're looking for, utilizing pictures that you have, and put that together, have it printed, again, maybe at a sponsor, and bring that with you. That's nicely bound, looks like an auto show style brochure, something you pick up at a dealer or an auto show. And then I would always recommend bringing a cover letter that is specific to the individual you are going to be meeting with or talking with, or the one you have the most relationship with. And then also bring, potentially, if you've established some parameters around what they're looking for, another one-pager, both of that and the cover letter that can be inserted into the other brochure, and that describes what you believe the mutual benefit is, and what could go into a customized sponsorship. So I would bring those things, and because you're going in face to face, it never hurts to leave a business card behind, just paper clipped to the top of all of that, hold it all together.
Okay, digging a little bit into the customized sponsorship, what are your thoughts on like sponsorship tiers or levels? Did you do this in the past?
Yes, absolutely. So we always had some more general tiers that were part of the sponsorship package, things that oftentimes came up, that involved swag or logo placement on the car, logo placement on website, reference in communications, social media, online, blog. We did all of that, and those are different opportunities. You're trying to differentiate when you do tiers, and so it's important to take advantage of as many things you can think of to differentiate. But then I also always open the door, regardless of what level they were at. They could be at the lowest level or the highest level. We always quantified everything based on financial value. So we would ask for some of that, because that was important, because some of these, one of our largest sponsors, actually both of our largest sponsors, were in-kind contributions, but they were extraordinarily valuable to the success of the car or the showcase of the program. And so we would always quantify those things out, and they received excellent placement. Frankly, we were often asked by some of our longer sponsors who had significant but not as significant commitments in terms of financial value. Well, how much did they give you? And we'd say, well, their sponsorship quantified out to be this. And they realized that if they, they're a little competitive aspect that maybe they wanted a better placement on the car. They wanted to be above them. And so, they would act accordingly in some cases. And so nothing wrong with a little competition. It's all for the good of everyone involved. And so tiers are great. Start with something generic, but always be open to customizing, because ultimately your goal is to form the relationship. And each relationship you have in life in Formula SAE will be different. So be open to that.
Okay. All right. Ideally, who on the team should manage the sponsorship? Is it one person or everybody, or?
So when I first started doing sponsorship, it was pretty small. I was a project manager, and that was supposed to be the quote unquote business person, who tracked everything and did the sponsorship. And I did that for about a year. And then I realized we needed to develop capacity. If we wanted to grow, we needed to really grow. And so we went out and recruited people. And we formed a new position that we called operations, which probably wasn't very accurate of the description at the time, but they literally worked on sponsorship. Operations manager and several team members within the operations team worked on sponsorship and worked on maintaining the sponsorships, and also worked on procurement of any supplies. And so it was kind of a dual series of roles. But we had at one time, I think, maybe 4 or 5 people on the operations team, including the manager, that worked exclusively on those functions. And they came to the team, all the team functions just like anybody else. They were part of the team just like anybody else, came to the competitions like anybody else. They were just as much of anything else as the guy driving the car or creating the A-arm. They had a specific function. And so I would encourage you, this is a great opportunity to reach out outside of your College of Engineering. Oftentimes Formula SAE teams start within the College of Engineering, but it's a product development competition. It is not an engineering competition. It has engineering aspects to it. And you are developing a product, and any product requires a customer base, it requires sales, it requires marketing, and it requires engineering and construction. And that's why all those things are part of the Formula SAE competition, because we want to strengthen all those skill sets.
Okay. I got another question for you. How would you approach a sponsor that was previously sponsoring the team 2 to 3 years ago if the contact at the company is no longer there?
A great question. So in some cases, it's going to be a cold call, but it never hurts to reference the individual, and say, Joe Smith was our previous contact. I think he's not with the organization anymore. He was in this department. Can you put me in touch with anybody in that same area? Or, if you, for instance, one thing I always used to do is, we went to a big university, but a lot of universities have a decent reach at this anyways. I would always look for an alumni. If there was an opportunity to have somebody, even if they were a junior person at the company, who had a connection to the university, that was always, if I needed to make a cold call or didn't have a direct relationship, I would always look for an alum that worked at the organization. If the person that he used to talk with was a very senior person, or reasonably senior in the organization, look around their department, look for any of their colleagues. Chances are they weren't the only person that touched the sponsorship that you worked on, and try and reform those relationships. Oftentimes, organizations will remember and say, oh yes, I totally remember that person's not here, but we loved the experience we had last time. They forwarded all your emails around, and we'd love to help you out again. We'll find somebody else that'll manage it. So go about things like that first. But if you get stuck, then start doing all the methods you do for a normal cold call, and look for relationships. And if not, look for people who are just going to answer the phone and keep talking with you. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is how a ton of these are formed.
Okay. I've got a 2-part question here. Can your own university be a sponsor? And should sponsors, can they be local or can they be on the other side of the country?
Yeah, so yes and yes. So the university, we always had the university as a sponsor. I mean, they oftentimes provided all the equipment and the locations for us to work. There's absolute financial value in that. In addition to the fact that they'll help the team actually exist, which in itself is an important and critical function. So the university certainly can be a sponsor. One thing that we did after we got really started expanding our marketing efforts, we caught the eye of a new dean in the College of Engineering, and he was very enthusiastic about the experiences that the team was generating and exposure the team was generating for the college, and so he ended up providing some discretionary funding out of his discretionary account, in addition to all the other support that the university and the college was providing. So, and other colleges can do that too, right? If you are recruiting from your business college, for instance, or your communications department, there's no harm in trying to go to those areas too, and promote your visibility there and develop relationships with their leadership, so that you can even maybe gain some additional things outside of just team members. And then the second question that you asked, across the country. So that example I shared earlier about a parts distributor that was somewhere not close to me or closer to another team, we're here in Michigan, and that distributor was in Washington State, and the team that was close by, and there's only a few teams in Washington, so you can guess, but you know, they were very generous, and the gentleman I spoke with wasn't a big company, I don't think, and you know, was a decision maker in the company, and he laughed at my point that I was the one calling, and helped us out, and donated the part free of charge. So you can form relationships everywhere.
How did you find that company in your experience across the country?
Yeah, so I went on. I found out that the manufacturer for the part did not do sponsorships, and so I needed to get creative. And so I started looking at all of their distributors. They weren't just a direct seller, and so they had a distribution network. And so I started calling distributors, and eventually I found one that was willing to help. And that one happened to be, 2,000 miles away, but you can ship anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. If anybody has any other questions, I'll give you about 10 seconds before we wrap up here. I don't know, Adam, if you have any other roundtable or any other ideas you'd like to share.
Not any new ideas, at least, but I did just want to say, this is oftentimes, just like anything in Formula SAE, it's a problem-solving endeavor, and being creative, thinking outside the box, not limiting yourself, looking to non-traditional sources is a great way of sparking your creativity around solving this problem. And take it seriously, show the mutual benefit. Remember that is every call you make, that the relationship you're trying to set up needs to be enjoyed by both parties. And so do that, and I think you'll be very successful. You can have a lot of fun doing it as well, and you get to meet a lot of great people who will benefit the organization, both the team and the organization that they're working for, but also could become great friends afterwards, and professional relationships too. And so think about those things, and would love to keep participating in these SAE Detroit things. We really enjoy doing the workshop in the fall on this event, and also enjoy the presentation event in the spring, as well as the other aspects, the competition overview. So register and participate with those things too. That's helpful to SAE Detroit and helps excite us to keep going on these year after year.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I want to thank all of our participants for joining our sponsorship event overview. And a special thank you to today's presenter, Adam, the SAE Detroit section staff, Alva Cologne, for your involvement in putting together today's presentation. Please remember to join us for our next CDS presentation overview event on Friday, January 14th. For any questions or inquiries, please email the SAE Detroit section at events@sae-detroit.org. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider liking this video, sharing it with someone who might find it useful, and subscribing to our SAE Detroit section YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.